All right, Dean, how often have you had to replace your phone over the years?
Many times. Yeah. Unfortunately, yes, many times.
What about your TVs?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Other random electronics that you find yourself replacing pretty frequently?
I mean, right? They're consumer products. Just feel like, they're designed to, year or two, couple years.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Everything seems engineered to be replaced.
Or they slow down.
Sooner or later, they slow down. Battery life
wasn't
is crap.
designed. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Well, enterprise hardware obviously is usually designed to be rugged, able to withstand work, wear, and tear. But are we really emphasizing the longevity as a measure of ROI with those devices?
We should be.
Because we think we should be. And this week we got some guests that are going to help prove that case. We have Logic Control's Brian Wheeler and Paul Peralta joining the show to make that case when selling operational technology against the consumer or cheap options.
Yes.
We're talking about what keeps end users coming back to those bad options and how we can maybe steer them away.
Why people keep doing that?
Why, exactly. What does it mean to design, position, and test long-lasting solutions across
It's fun
industries?
having an engineer on here
really
talking about that kind of stuff, right?
There was, I will be honest, there's a few times when he was talking about things that I'm just like, whoosh, right over my head. I was like,
but he brought it back. I thought,
he did. I think he did a good job.
Mere plebeians.
If you're an engineering type in the crowd, one, you're going to be very, very happy this conversation. Be like, oh, thank God I don't have to listen to these dummies trying to talk about this stuff. If you're not, if you're the dummies like us, then maybe you will. But he still brings it together in a way that is very tangible and understandable about how you can go out and sell this stuff in your business. And more importantly, find good partners like Logic Controls to help you go out and sell these solutions. So we're also going to talk about the shifting software and operating system industries, that impacts on device manufacturing. So forgive us if we go a little bit long here, but you're going to get some bang for your buck because of it.
There you go.
Some ROI for you.
Very nice. Very nice. Yes.
I'm John Martin.
And I'm Dean Reverman.
Welcome to BlueStar Nation. This episode of BlueStar Nation is brought to you by Logic Controls. All right, you know those places where hardware really gets put to the test.
Yes.
Fast-paced kitchens.
Yes.
All that grease and grime. You've worked in some kitchens. You know what's going on back there.
Yes.
Most of us probably, if we saw what happens in the kitchens, would not ever actually eat in restaurants because,
yes and no, for sure.
I know the goal is this, but there's a lot happening back there.
There's a lot happening back there.
For a random electronic.
It is not like the kitchen you have at your house. Let's just put it that way.
No.
There is a lot.
If it is, you probably need to do some cleaning. And also, like, who are you cooking for?
Yeah, right.
Busy retail stores. That's a crazy environment where lots of stuff can be going on. Rugged industrial floors. There's all kinds of stuff happening there. Well, Logic Controls makes durable POS, KDS, and display solutions to keep going. Even with that heat, with the grease, with the heavy use. They're sleek, they're powerful, they're in stock, ready when you are. To learn more about the importance of longevity and durability in this episode, then go check out the Logic Controls product selection at the BlueStar online Blue Store, BlueStarInc.com, or at LogicControls.com. All right, we've got a couple great guests in studio with us
Yes,
today.
we do.
Always love when we get to have the folks here in the studio.
So much better.
It really is. It's just a different feel, you know? Like, we love all of our guests, but it's a little different when they get to be here and riff with us.
And they've made a journey to be here.
They've made a journey
which we
to
are
be
very
here.
grateful for.
Exactly.
That's right. Yeah.
So we'll kick it off. We got Brian Wheeler. He's the CEO of Logic Controls joining us
sir.
over here. Brian, tell us a little about yourself, your background. I know you've been with Logic Controls for a little while and moved up the ladder there a little bit. What's going on with you?
Yeah, well, thank you. And been with Logic Controls now for 2 years. But I spent the first part of my career really in sales, but mostly in supply chain. Was with the Subway Restaurant Co-op, managing business services, and then what evolved into in-store technology.
Nice.
Started it before credit and debit was even a thing, right? It sounds like a long time ago, but
you are dating
really,
yourself.
I know.
Not that far back. Yeah.
It's really hard to tell people that.
Right.
So you start the age, But anyhow, the good years of technology as it evolved in restaurants, specifically within QSR, and from point of sale hardware into surveillance and early days of digital sign, not signage.
That's right. Yeah.
And then it went into full menu boards and and on, and so it really took on the industry from the buyer side,
Right.
and looking at that for what a brand needs and a big franchise group. And worked on after that tenure, worked on data and video analytics and some things on deployment, and then I was consulting with Dollar General on their in-store technology. So went out of the restaurant into the retail side, went out franchised into all corporate.
Right.
Well, they're all the same in many ways, as you know. But really gave looking at how equipment lasts and how what's important to the operators and to the owners of it. So
you've seen a little bit of everything.
Yeah, really.
I appreciate that when we have folks on here that have not only can talk the talk, but have walked the walk at some point and understand what's actually happening in these businesses.
Yeah.
So good stuff.
Good
Glad
stuff.
to have you here. Yeah.
Yep.
And we'll be back to talk to you a little bit more about that and what the end users are dealing with here in a moment. But let's also introduce our other guest. We got Paul Peralta, the Director of Engineering for Logic Controls.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks. Welcome to the show. Tell us a little about your background. What led you to where you are today?
Well, I don't have nearly as tenured of a background as Brian does, but I'm originally from Michigan, so driving around today, saw a couple Myers. I was like, hey, I know that store. Got my degree in electrical engineering. Before that, just worked on cars with my father. He owned a car shop, specializing in German cars, so it kind of started the hands-on trend a little bit, and then I graduated. COVID happened. Came down to Florida and did a little bit of Uber Eats, which was my start in the industry. And then,
all right,
yep. And then eventually I went to Logic Controls and really got involved with the design process. They had a whole new platform where they were trying to revamp the entire product line. They needed development. They needed more engineers, and I jumped right on. I wanted to be a part of that.
Nice.
Well, that background with the German vehicles too. I mean, that's they make very good cars. They make high quality, long lasting vehicles over there in Europe for the most part. So
that's very true.
I think that lends itself nicely to what you're what you're doing and what we're talking about today. So, all right, well, let's kick this thing off here. We want to talk a little bit about the idea of longevity in hardware and positioning the value of enterprise hardware, because it's we're at this point where I think we're all combating the consumer landscape and understand that there's a lot of people out there that still think, well, I can just go buy a smartphone, and that will do everything I needed to do, or I can buy a TV, and that's the same as an enterprise digital signage, right? So again, we in the reseller channel, we know that their enterprise is better than consumer or the cheap options that try to get away with with what we are positioning on a much cheaper level necessarily, but what's keeping end users from making the leap? What are they dealing with that's keeping them from making that transition and understanding the value of the enterprise hardware? Again, I know it's potentially a little bit costlier. And then on the other side of that, what kind of pushback, misconceptions are you still hearing when you're out there in the market? And obviously your experience in sales, Brian, will help illustrate that a little bit. So what are you hearing when you're out there talking to these folks?
Well, it's changed, right? So I'd say early on that buyers wanted to buy technology and expect it to last like the refrigerator. They were going to have it for 20 years and it was going to be just fine, and they'll replace it when it completely quits running. And as we know, technology evolves much faster than that. So the buyers have started to learn that, kind of looking at a life cycle, but it's at the same time making sure that they don't have problems, that it's more important than ever now on the operations side of a business, right? So no downtime, and if there is an issue, how quickly can they get it resolved as well for them?
Yeah.
So it's evolved a lot. So the buyer's perspective of it, but the thing that hasn't changed is being cost conscious and being in a penny business and looking at what's happening within their business and other costs and impacting how much they can afford to spend.
Right.
So they're very, very consciously aware of price always. That doesn't go away.
Right.
But it still comes back to, hey, how are we going to use this product? How's it going to impact my business? How long is it going to last? And they're trying to avoid problems in essence and make good decisions.
Yeah. Which I think is very much like what we're always preaching to, is like, how can you help them solve problems?
Absolutely.
And avoid issues that are going on there.
Yeah.
Paul, do you have anything to add on this? I mean, you may not talk to, the end users quite as much, but, from your experience on the engineering side, I'm sure a lot of that is informed by what they're actually saying, right?
Yeah, definitely. I got a pretty good flow of communication from both sales and support, telling me what people actually want, what they're complaining about. And I try to just approach it almost from seeing myself as the end user, So I'm trying to think about it in the sense of, okay, if I was buying a product, I'm looking for a proven track record of reliability, longevity. You know, you could get the cheap pair of boots, or you can get the expensive ones that you can have redone over and over throughout your life. So, yeah, definitely keeping that in mind when we go through the design process is just something that I keep in mind. That's pretty much it.
Yeah. Sense. I think one of the things that is influenced the whole industry is, I guess you could sum it up in overconfidence in consumer brands, because a lot of times, you know, we are combating, when you think about enterprise grade and what that brings to the table, when you have people like Apple that can make a pretty darn good device that, you know, becomes kind of this standard that everybody has in their hand. It's like, well, yeah, this thing just works, so why couldn't it just work for whatever? You name the enterprise application. And even though we've seen it fail time and time again because it's just simply not designed for that type of environment, we face those headwinds as an industry. You know, it's like, well, yes, okay, this does well as that, but you know, then they try to apply that to screens and they try to apply that to other areas, and so, you know, from a reseller standpoint, I at the end of the road, I think that you really have to become very versed at having the kind of total cost of ownership discussion, right? And you need to have the bullets in your holster around how these other devices, the consumer grade devices, are truly built for consumer grade. It's a completely different environment, right? Yeah. Not to dive into the engineering, but you know, engineers are concerned about how long is it going to last? What are the usage patterns on these particular devices? You know, where are they being used? Right. Those types of things, and really scrutinizing, well, how is this device used in hospitality? Beyond that, how is it used back of house in grimy, greasy situations, you know, and stuff like that? So there's just a lot of concern, right? So you have to be able to have that conversation. You have to talk about the awareness of TCO, right? I'm sure you guys run into this all the time.
Yeah, and
right?
I definitely agree with what you're saying. I think that there's a lot behind what a product is actually doing that kind of goes right over a lot of people's heads.
Yep.
And when you're just randomly using your phone, it could be just for an app or something, you're really not pushing it to its limit. You know, you're not subjecting it, the CPU and everything else to the maximum stress that it could be under. So once you start putting that device into an environment that will be pushed, will be stressed for long periods of time. I mean, most of the time it could be running 24 hours a day, you know, and it's not in some nice air-conditioned environment like this place. You know, it's in the back corner in a cabinet with a heater on top of it, and you got to be able to quantify all of that, you know, all of that heat and see exactly how is that going to affect the components over long term. It's something that is not thought about enough, but when it comes to our industry, it's extremely important. Yeah.
So you're saying that like doom scrolling on social media all day is not the same as managing hundreds of customers in a business?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, I guess
in a purpose-built environment. That's right.
Yeah.
Slightly different from us just entertaining ourselves with our black screens all day long. Brian, any final thoughts you want to add to this? I know you're going to step away and let Paul kind of, you know, talk a little more about the engineering side of things, but anything else you wanted to add on the misconceptions out there in the market?
Well, you know, it's interesting that a lot of times people using that example of their cell phone, you know, they're quick to replace it. They want the newest and the latest. Sometimes with the business technology, it's want to hold out as long as possible. So we try to educate and find a balance between, you know, having that right product for that environment and understand the users and the economics of it, trying to support them as best as we can with that.
Yeah. So true.
Yeah, definitely. All right, well, Brian, we're going to let you pop away for a moment so we can chat with Paul more on the kind of the engineering side and the design side of what you guys are doing over Logic Controls. But he'll be back to join us a little bit later with the VAR value and what's on our radar at the end. So, Brian, thanks for joining us here at the beginning.
Nice. All right, excellent. Thank you.
All right, let's continue on here, Paul. You know, again, we wanted to talk, you know, about the idea of longevity and about what goes into making hardware have that longevity aspect and why VARs should be actually out there selling it. So, you know, I think we've talked a lot about the personal devices, consumer devices. I think, you know, Dean, you talked about, hey, Apple makes a great product that we all seem to love and enjoy and think it just works. However, the market is also very much engineered to you giving this up and getting a new one at least every few years or so. I think ideally,
which my kids are now complaining about. They totally are tapped into the whole, hey, this thing was designed to only last 3 years. Now my battery sucks.
Exactly. And I think it was up to them. It'd be like yearly, but most of us are. If we're lucky, we get. If you're really lucky, maybe you get 5 years out of your device, and by then it's probably in a pretty bad shape. So I think there's that expectation that everything's got this short lifespan, that there's refreshes are needed, and I think sometimes that might bleed over a little bit into the reseller world, and maybe there's an expectation of like, hey, can we go in and rip and replace every couple of years or so? And I know that's something that folks might enjoy, that idea, and think like it's a good way to get some new revenue. But don't you think the longevity is probably a little bit of a better practice? And how do you factor that in when you're out there designing and positioning these solutions?
Yeah, definitely. I think just being a consumer myself, I want something that's going to last, and I don't want to put something in somebody's hands or give it to the sales team. It's something that our sales team is going to have to be apologizing for, right? What do they say? Like anything over 1% of field failure rate turns a hardware company into an apology company. Yeah, so you get real good at apologizing, and we're not in that space. So yeah, I think we have a lot of different approaches that we take in the engineering side, and it kills sometimes the upper management, but we like to take a cost plus approach where it's like, you've heard the question, what would you do if money wasn't an object, right? So it's like, what would you build if money wasn't an object? That's not over designing, because we still have our specs, we still have our tolerances, what we're looking for, but we're making sure that we can do it as best as possible. That could be simple things like increasing the tray size or pouring thicker ground plane, maybe like ESD or TVS protection at each of those ports for EMI, like any noise, things like that. Or it could even get a little bit further sometimes when you're talking about the components. Earlier we were mentioning automotive grade components. They kind of set the standard for environmental, withstanding harsh environments, things like that. So we do all of that beforehand, and then once we have that platform, then we start to figure out, okay, where can we cut costs? But quality has to be the last thing on that list. So there's a lot of optimizations that can be put into the manufacturing process. For example, you could put test points on the PCB. It doesn't matter if it's a full motherboard or even just a peripheral, just making sure that you're minimizing those manufacturing errors, that you're minimizing the amount of time that the RMA guys are spending supporting this product, or maybe minimizing maybe a refresh for a PCB because there was a mistake initially. All of that stuff costs time. And the margins, are killed by each and every one of those things. All those profits kind of disappear. So the book doesn't close at the end of the month. The book closes when that product is end of life. And for us, we're thinking about it long term in the sense of how can we maximize this profit over a long period of time. And we do that by minimizing the amount of time we have to spend with it after it's out the door.
Out the door. Which is brilliant. And, coming from the VAR perspective, I think that's very appreciated, I guess would be the word, because when you think about it, there is this tension, right, between planned obsolescence on the manufacturing side and, the strategic desire to have longevity in the products that you're putting into the marketplace. Now, I'm speaking from the VAR perspective, right? So, you want to build your customers, you want to build loyalty and trust and those types of things. And if you're putting in equipment that you feel good about and know that is designed to have a certain amount of stability over its life, that's better. That's a better place to be at when you're selling those types of solutions than products that aren't designed for that. And you have some issues walking in the door saying, I can't really support these types of devices. I can support these types of devices because I know a lot about it. Right.
People remember that.
Absolutely.
I told you guys that I worked in a shop with my father. He owned it for many years. We specialized in German vehicles for a reason. Because if we would have specialized in Toyotas, then we would have been out of business years before. So people know what they're buying, and they want that proven track record. They don't want to have to deal with it. I don't want to have to deal with it. To be honest, I want to be moving and developing the next product. So.
Yeah, I think that's a nice philosophy. The idea of like, hey, I don't want my own headaches. Why would I create and design something and put it out there in the market that I know is going to give me a headache that you're going to apologize for, like you mentioned before. I mean, I think if you're aiming for this kind of rip and replace model and refresh and like, I want to get this in there, but I'm going to try to get it back out again as quickly as I can. I mean, one, you're not acting any better than the consumer brand at that point. Like you might as well not pitch yourself as a enterprise brand necessarily. But the other part of it too would be just to me is like you're just opening up opportunities to give your business away. You know, if you're trying to peddle products that you expect to fail within a certain amount of time, and you're looking ahead,
it's the short term hit, right?
Yeah, you're thinking like, hey, sure, like that might work out. Maybe you get a couple cycles where you get to put some new products in and get a little burst of revenue out of that. But in the long run, you're setting yourself up for someone else to come in and take that business away from you, maybe by pitching something that is going to have more longevity. And in my mind, also, I just don't know that there is really it's not the same kind of recurring revenue as the other stuff that we're always talking about, which I think this lends itself to that conversation of recurring revenue and understanding like, hey, the hardware doesn't have to be the place that you're making all your extra money. You can do that with your partnerships with with services or with software, which we'll talk about more in a moment as well. There's other things you can do to generate that recurring revenue and keep a steady base of revenue from the same customer without looking for a way to get hardware out of their hands and shove something new in every few years or so, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So recurring revenue is something I don't touch as often, being in the hardware. Right. So the way that I have to pitch it, I'm not a salesperson, but sometimes I have to put my sales hat on. And, and when I talk to, upper management, Brian specifically, I have to tell him, you have to quantify how much money you would lose if we don't do these things, like let's look at it down the road. How much money are we going to lose in this and that? Everybody's time costs money. Factory time costs money in the manufacturing process. So I try to look at it as, what are we wasting? Let's save money there. Let's not waste as much, rather than where can we generate more?
Paul, that's a really good point. When you bring in the sustainability kind of part of the equation, of course, I think that matters generationally. It matters, right? So if you have buyers that are younger or whatnot, that is a meaningful argument to make. That this product is designed to last longer. Therefore, the life cycle's more appropriate for a sustainability conversation around that, right?
Yeah.
And to your point, not just from the manufacturing standpoint and the sustainability that you have there, but the longer life cycle is better for the environment at the end of the road. Right?
Yeah. I'm big on that. Yep. And, the people at work and my Logic Controls are also very big on that too. Yep. We're all unified in that sense. That's not the biggest thing that you see on the banner maybe, but it's something that's definitely part of our conversations, and we work hard to be a part of that trend. Not just because people like it, but because we care.
No, I agree, because I think people associate consumer with throwaway, to a certain degree. I mean, when you talk about clothes and certainly some electronics, it's just like, it's not expected to last, right? Yeah. So anyway, yeah,
definitely. So, when I was looking over what you guys do and your kind of value proposition with longevity and the purpose in your design and engineering, I noticed that there was a lot of testing stuff that you guys go through to make sure, obviously, which, anybody should be testing, but you guys seem especially rigorous in how you go out and test your products. And especially, I think what was interesting is how you're doing it from industry to industry, which I think is the kind of thing sometimes people don't think as much about. They're like, all right, well, this device does X. Why can't it do X in retail and X in hospitality if X is essentially the same thing? But I don't think you guys quite see it that way. So what's your approach to like industry to industry and testing with each of them?
Yeah, well, I mean, we've been in the business for a while. So we've had products come back that don't work. And they say, why doesn't it work? And you open it up and it's completely covered in grease. You might get a cockroach or two in there. It might be early lunch. So we definitely understand that there's a lot of different environments, and everything that I just described before, that process of cost plus is going into the good product. We have a good, better, best model. Yeah. It's not, poor, or mediocre, poor, and then okay. So we start with the good, and that good is usually enough to cover more of the lighter industries, like you said, the retail, where it's not going to be under extreme stress, or maybe it's just a good environment. But then you move into the hospitality, and you got people providing services all over, but there's kiosks outside. You have bump bars and like all kinds of things that are indoors as well in the kitchen environment.
Yep.
So now you need to start adding on to that good foundation. You're looking at maybe IP rating to make sure that there's no dust or water ingress. There's a lot of different ways that we can maybe get a higher nit LCD with a longer backlight lifetime. Instead of 50K, maybe we'll put a 70K hour, because we know that it's going to be on full brightness the entire time, and we don't want it to die early. So understanding what the product is going into, what environment it's going into, definitely changes what we're going to offer them. But at the end of the day, we have that good, better, and best. And as long as we maintain those three, then usually we were able to provide a solution. When they come to me and tell me, hey, what do you have that fits this environment? I'll say, okay, what are they doing with it?
Yes.
That's the most important thing. What operating system are they running? What software application are they running? How much processing power? What's the environment? And once I get all those details, then something in our model will fit that most of the time. And if it doesn't, I'll just tell them. I'll be like, it doesn't, like what you're doing is you're not going to be able to run an entire server room, for this entire building over here off of a mini PC.
Right.
There's nothing I can do. There's nothing no engineer that can do that's going to make that work. So, yeah.
Sometimes you got to overcome their hurdles. Maybe help make some suggestions of what they need to be doing a little better in order for you to actually deliver what you need to them, too.
Exactly. Yeah.
Makes sense.
When you consider from the reseller perspective, I think it's so important this is one of the reasons why resellers should have good relationships with their vendor partners.
Yep.
Because these are purpose-built devices. The reseller is becoming more and more involved in what is the business outcome? What are we trying to create? What kind of solution? And then back into that, right? And with the right products, the right software, those types of things, so that you can walk into a situation where, I don't know, it might be a poolside cabana that's, the screen's going to be in the sun most of the day, and that's a completely different environment than a warehouse that's going to be maybe dealing with a lot of dust or something like that. This is the nuance that a reseller needs to bring to the table.
Yep.
And having good relationships with vendors and understanding how they're engineering the products, and being able to work with them to find the right product to work in that engineered environment. This is critical.
Yeah.
This is the differentiation.
Yep.
I'm going to make some notes here. Good, better, best, not poor.
Not
mediocre,
poor.
Okay. That's a pretty good thing right there.
It's true, yeah. It kills. Sometimes Brian is like, Paul, are you designing for a NASA rocket ship here? Like this is just our standard product, and but he's really good with heeding the advice from engineering. I know for a lot of companies, and I've worked other places before where it's a constant battle between engineering and the business side of things, and Logic Controls is pretty good with just letting us run with it and then figuring out where are we gonna optimize the process later.
That's awesome.
And I don't think this is just a problem either on the engineering side of things too. I feel like this happens a lot in businesses where especially across the industry thing, where they just want to squeeze something where it necessarily doesn't belong, or they haven't thought through. I've seen it on the marketing side of things.
For sure.
Sometimes I talk to people that are like, well, we've got this product and it works great here. We think it could work great over there in healthcare or industrial or supply chain or whatever, even though we've modeled everything on retail. Yeah. So let's go do a campaign where we're trying to shove it in over there. And I look and I see like, well, there's nothing about what you've done that indicates that you are ready for that or that you've done that or tested that. Yeah, but we think we can do it. and inevitably it kind of flops and it tends to fall on its face. Yeah. And I also get worried, like if someone does bite at that, are they going to get it and go like, well, this was clearly not for us. What are we doing here?
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's the kind of stuff I just, I think across the board, you have to be very cognizant of what's happening industry to industry and understand that the needs are different. Even if it seems like a simple device, like, well, a screen accomplishes what we needed to do. It still shows people stuff. It doesn't matter what industry, right? Well, no, it's not going to be the same from one to the other.
Yeah. Yeah. I think appeasing the customer or giving them what they want isn't the same as providing a solution, right? So understanding what their problem is, what are they trying to accomplish, and giving them a full solution with an educated solution, understanding their environment. And you're not always dealing with, I'm at least not always dealing directly with engineers. Sometimes I'll have to jump on sales calls and try to extract that information, you know, which they may or may not know, but you know, it's like, let's find out because this is important, you know, like, do you, what is the environment? Maybe they're looking at a fanned CPU, you know, and it's like, if this is going to be in the back of a kitchen, then you probably don't want a fan. So let's go with the fanless option. You know, oh, but the fan is maybe a little bit cheaper, or it could be a multitude of reasons why they thought they needed that. And then you give them the proper solution, and then they don't have to come back. Hopefully they remember that.
That's right.
Yeah.
Hopefully. Yeah. Exactly. I can only imagine being in your shoes and like all the things you get asked. Wait a minute, this is going where? Oh, it's going on a fishing boat, and there's going to be a lot of salt water. And it's going to be like, well, I didn't plan for salt water.
I know.
Well, you got to plan for it.
It's fun. It keeps things.
Is that when you reach out to Brian and say, hey, I need a ticket to the Bahamas to test out some saltwater applications?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. I'll jump in the suitcase.
I promise you it will bring value. You mentioned, you know, software earlier, and I wanted to talk about that too, like the software operating systems, because that's one place where there's got to be a lot of like, you know, flexibility, and there's got to be a lot of fluctuating things happening because platforms are always changing. You know, operating systems are constantly evolving and changing and updating. I mean, you know, we've seen just in the last few years the changes Windows has had and what's happening with Android right now. And, you know, everybody's trying to get a piece of this pie. Software, you know, there's so many different software companies out there. I'm sure you could go to any 20 customers and they could all be running 20 completely different applications. Yeah. How does that go into what you think about when you're designing and producing these solutions? And, you know, how does that fold into your testing process, or maybe some of those questions and calls you get thrown into that you have to ask about to understand how the software and the OS fits into what you're trying to do too?
It's something that has to be dealt with constantly. I think there's a new flavor of Android like on a weekly basis. Right? Yeah, we're probably
Don't
on
even
Android.
Ask me where we're at.
We'll be at Android 25 by the end of this podcast.
Yeah, right.
So, and it's something that we have to keep up to date. I think to answer your question a little bit simply, you have to make the product adaptable. You have to make it malleable, right? When it comes to peripherals, it's more of like abstracting the hardware from the software, right? So, I mean, maybe this is getting a little bit too deep, but you don't want to be relying on OS level directories that in order to communicate with your product or a custom driver, right? Because you can hit that Windows update button or update your GMS. And then you have a problem. And then you have to restart your driver from scratch, right? So if you use like provided drivers from Android or from Windows, you know, like HID class drivers, CDC class drivers, then you could just pull the latest header and source files and implement those into your code, update a couple of commands, and you can roll with the punches that way. And I think that's mainly the way that we do it. You also have to stay. This has been something that I struggled with in the past in a previous job that I kind of learned and implemented at Logic Controls, which was you don't want to be stuck in a reactive state. You don't want the customer to hit that update button and find the issue with your product before you do. So a lot of testing has to go into all of those operating systems. Chrome OS is getting big now, you know. It's a tricky beast to handle, but when we have things like Windows Insider Preview, where you could get beta versions of Windows, you know, Android is a little bit of a different process, but you can get development builds of Android before they even come out, before the customer ever sees it. So that way you have your solution in place before you get the call when somebody's angry and they have 5 stores that are out because Joe or maybe the janitor came and accidentally hit the update button, or they had some other issue and they thought maybe updating it will fix everything. So and then we also always have to have a running how do I put it? Just a spreadsheet of all of the operating systems that are supported, and the most important thing is their end of life, right? So when we talk about product and longevity in general, we're thinking long-term here, and the operating system has to factor into that because Windows 10 won't be supported forever. Windows 11 or certain versions of Android or Ubuntu. So that's always a part of the process. How long is this operating system even going to be out before we have to do a full refresh?
Yeah.
No doubt.
When I think about operating systems, and my question to you is, are you seeing more demands put on the compute of what you're designing, right? Like, so, we are starting to see where some trends, like the kiosk is more than just a kiosk. Now it's got to have a camera on it that is doing machine vision of the face, and it's extrapolating that information so it can do real-time AI. I see that you have compact computers that you're now offering. I guess that's to do compute on the edge, right? Because there's all these types of solutions, and maybe comment on that. Are you seeing that obviously intentionally? From an engineering standpoint, now you have to engineer more compute into some of these devices, or what's that looking like?
Yeah, I think it comes back to what is the need, right? What is the environment? But we have to have. We're seeing the shift towards the Linux-based operating systems. Android being one of them, a little bit lighter weight. Yep. But the main thing is that all of the ARM-based processors that are coming out, the big, 3, are going to already have their neural processing unit in there. They're going to have their image signal processor that's already created, and it has the backbone in order to deal with these types of stresses, these specific AI peripherals. Yep. It could be, like you said, the facial recognition.
Yeah, right.
Could be through the drive-through, But so at least having the platform that can support it is the main part of it. And, like integrating those features into the rest of the board is a big part of it. But there's only so much that we can do from the hardware standpoint, right? Because at the end of the day, it is intermixing with software. Right. That software has to be optimized, and we can't account for what software they're always going to be putting onto our products. Right. So a lot of times it's not necessarily a hardware issue, but we have to work with them to find a solution and optimize the software. So we'll just help them understand how the hardware is mapped out and what they could do to optimize their use of the hardware with their software development.
So are you seeing an uptick in modularity then, and the need for modularity to plug in peripheral devices to maybe core units, right? Yeah. To accommodate that, whether it's a camera, whether it's a microphone to pick up voice now, those types of things?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the manufacturers for the processors themselves have been onto this for a bit. So it was up to us to just kind of implement it in a way that made sense for the customer in our industries. Yeah. And I'm seeing it all over. Yeah. I mean, it gets almost to a point where you have to pick and choose where are you going to specialize in, right? That's a good point. Because it gets so broad. You could get so deep into each and every single peripheral. I mean, cameras alone, a simple camera.
I know, it's not simple.
How far that rabbit hole goes. Yeah, you could be, you can get a doctorate in just image signal processing, right? So, it gets to the point where it's like, all right, how far do we want to go down this?
Right. That's got to be an engineering challenge. I'm with you. Yeah, it's crazy.
That's why guys like Paul exist.
Yeah, exactly.
Just think about these things that the rest of us don't.
Nobody can do everything, and no matter how many engineers you have, they're not all going to be specialists in everything. So you got to kind of pick and choose where you're going to play, and put your mark there, and tell people this is what we do, this is what we do best, and if you need this, then maybe there's somebody else out there that specializes in this. We'll connect you with somebody. We've tested it. Yeah, we've done the compatibility. We know it works, but it's not our product. And we'll give them the solution.
Yeah.
It's awesome. It lends itself to what you were saying earlier about how important it is to get close to vendors and manufacturers.
Oh, for sure.
And because
absolutely,
again, the idea of you can have someone like a Paul that can come in and help ask these questions and understand what's actually going on and recognize where there are issues that are going to need to be addressed before they become problems in the future. That's invaluable. And if you're just trying to go it solo and you're just like, I'll just go buy some products and sell them and see what happens, well, you're probably going to get left out on the back end there.
For sure. Yeah.
Well, that will lend itself to Brian coming back in here in a couple minutes and talking to us a little bit more about Logic Control's approach to longevity and performance and how they're going to, again, help you get to where you need to go. Before we do that, a quick note of what's happening around BlueStar Nation. ISVs on Tap is back with a couple new episodes featuring Esper's
What's he doing now?
Keith Zott and Jerry Abiog from Standard Insights.
Oh, two good people. There you go.
Josh Kelly, as always, he's exploring their potential as recurring revenue partners, why they should be part of your device management and SaaS solutions, and as always, he shares a beer with his guests. I don't know why we
didn't we
let him just come in here and drink on the job.
Where is he again?
Yeah, really.
Yeah.
Where is this?
It's a little ways down from here, actually.
Yeah,
He set
the
some
studio
shop just
next one over,
Yeah,
yeah.
a couple spaces down, and they just they bring some folks in. They have a beer. They talk about some software solutions, and
It's pretty good.
I mean, it's not a bad gig to have. I guess
bad gig,
I don't know why we haven't. I keep trying to tell Dean we need to have some bourbon here.
Bourbon,
on the pod,
yes,
but
yes.
apparently
I'm
he thinks that we might struggle a little bit if we do that. You can find all ISV on Tap episodes on the BlueStar Inc. YouTube page, or check out the link in the show notes. And while you're doing that, take a brief moment to subscribe to our YouTube page, hit like for this episode, leave us a comment, subscribe to us on any podcast platform of your choice. Check out our Blue Star Nation blog. And of course, if you have ideas for the show, things you want to hear about, if you're thinking like, hey, Paul knows this stuff, I want him to come back on and talk about something else. Sure. Hey,
Or German cars. Either
or
one.
German cars. Yeah. Why not? Yeah. Be a very, very special episode. Yeah. We're happy to bring him back on, or bring anybody on that you want to hear from, and topics that you want to hear about. But to do that, we have to hear from you.
Yeah.
So one, you can always find us on the Blue Star LinkedIn page. We're always posting about the podcast there. Feel free to leave us comments and let us know what you like, or reach out to us directly, nation@bluestarinc.com. All right, let's get into a little VAR value here. We've brought Brian back in to talk a little bit more about what Logic Controls is doing. So, Brian, I'm going to let you start this. Let's talk to us about Logic Controls here and your approach to the longevity and the performance. We've obviously heard the engineering side of things from Paul, but what do you feel like you're doing differently to go out there and ensure that VARs can feel secure selling your products, and that they do have something that is going to last a while and deliver on the results and expectations that their customers expect?
Yeah, so kind of like you're talking about, right? It's about quality, but first it starts with partnerships. So Logic Controls is very proactive and taking an approach with VARs and customers and BlueStar about building those partnerships, working together, understanding the needs, partnering on it, right? And at the end of the day, that we can align to what the needs are, we're going to deliver a lot more value,
right?
To the customer. And, the VARs got to understand that. So we're here to partner, to educate on the things that we're doing with the product, to show the different use cases that's built around it, what makes it unique by product and how it's used, and kind of like some of the stuff you've been speaking with Paul about that as well. And, part of that value also has to, be about cost, right? You got to balance this stuff out, with the end users. They got to be able to deliver value right down to the end user with it and what they're doing, and being able to make money.
Yeah.
Okay. They're in business.
Yeah. Like it or not, at some point they're going to ask you how much it costs.
That's right.
Yeah. At some point, somebody wants to know the price. Right.
They don't tend to just buy willy nilly.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. But in equally though, our goal is to make sure that they don't have any problems, and if they do have a problem, and that it's quickly resolved, and it's simple process to be able to do it. Nobody wants that frustration when something goes wrong. Right.
Yeah.
And so
true.
Being there all the way through with the partners and building that partnership and doing it together, and limiting issues and addressing them as they occur, makes a big difference.
Yeah, definitely. Paul, anything you want to add
good.
there?
No, whenever people start talking about the actual numbers and how much money it costs to build things,
that is not your problem.
Yeah, I just go to the other room and I say, you guys duke it out, Yeah.
That is the perks of being an engineer. It's like, hey, I made it look great. You guys deal with the other part.
Exactly.
Of it.
You figure it out.
That sounds like a sales problem, not an engineering problem.
Exactly. Yeah, I
designed this thing to work. Damn it.
Yeah. My job is to make it more expensive, not cheaper. I don't really have much to add to that. I think he summed it up pretty nicely.
There you go.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
Yeah, right. There is that tension between longevity and strategically, designing products. But we've been a great partner of Logic Controls for how many years now? It's just a decades. It feels like good stuff that they offer, and always feel confident walking out into the marketplace with Logic Controls type of components. They're going to work.
There you go.
For the environments they're designed for every single time.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
All right, well, let's wrap up as always with the fun part of the show, What's on Our Radar, where we get to talk about anything in the world of tech, innovation, science, business, the news, entertainment, which is whatever we feel like talking about today. Paul, let you kick it off here. What's on your radar right now?
photonic processing.
Whoa,
wow.
what's
Okay.
that? Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So what's photonic processing?
Photonic
I love
processing.
it.
Yeah.
Diving right in.
Well, I think that you guys have covered a lot of AI in this segment before,
yes.
so I was on that track, and then I saw an episode yesterday, and I was like, you got to scratch that. Yeah. So this is something that's kind of been in the back of my mind, and it's basically you're using, instead of electrical signals, you're using light to process.
That's the photonic part.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, it's mainly used with ALUs, arithmetic logic units. So it's really good at super fast computation. There's a couple of companies that are out there starting to do this right now.
Okay.
It's becoming more and more feasible, but basically you don't have heat issues with the light, right? You don't
really.
I mean,
that's counterintuitive.
There is.
You would think that there would be some heat going on there. Go ahead.
There's definitely heat going on, but as the light travels itself, at least you don't have the resistance in the circuit, and resistance is where some of that power loss comes from.
Are you in a vacuum? No.
I don't know.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. I haven't gotten that deep into it yet, and now we're getting into the deep applied physics. Yeah. But
I know nothing about thermodynamics, so I'm not. I'm gonna bow out right now.
No, but there is definitely going to be an electron photon barrier, which is where you're going to get your heat from. But you can utilize it for a lot of the faster processors, right, or faster processes, transistors and capacitors, which end up being ones and zeros, take time to charge, take time to discharge. And, even if it's microseconds or nanoseconds, when you multiply that, it becomes significant, So these devices are operating in the picoseconds. We're talking,
Is this going to get us into like the quantum computing level that we're talking about?
No, I don't think that's along the same lines. I think quantum computing is kind of its own thing.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I'm not a physicist either. So.
But it does help with it, like when you marry that photon processor with the electrical side of things, with the standard processing unit, then you could have things, and it circles back obviously unintentionally to AI, because AI requires a lot of computation. Training models requires insane amounts of computation, which end up just being addition and multiplication when you really break it down to the to the sub levels of it. So photonic processing, I think, is something that I'm keeping my eye on in the future. And I don't know. I mean,
I'm investing. Who's the company? Let's go.
Logic Controls.
Logic Controls.
You heard it here first. Yeah. It might exceed Brian's budget.
What says you, Brian?
Don't worry about the price, Brian. Just
we're all in.
Just buy me a particle accelerator, and I'll take care of everything else.
Sweat coming down Brian's head right now.
Just that little particle accelerator in the corner there. Just buy me one of those.
We'll handle the rest. Just front the bill.
Classic.
Good stuff. Photonic processing. All right, Brian, what's on your radar?
Beat that, Brian.
Right now?
Yeah, really.
Yeah. You guys, you tell set up about entertainment and news, and he goes photonic processing. Right.
Yeah, that's how it goes sometimes. Yeah.
Now you see the daily ops. I'm sitting here thinking, college football is going to kick off in a week and a half.
Yes.
The Michigan graduates not even sure they have a football team over there.
Or at least one that's playing legally.
Shots fired.
I'm an Ohio boy.
No offense.
And I am too, as we talked about teams. So it's a tough week one kickoff. There we go. We're worried about different things. It's a dangerous time.
There you go. So from photonic processing to college football.
There you go.
That's a good one. That's a good thing to have on your radar. It's that time of year. I'm getting pumped for the football season coming up too.
100%.
I am too.
Good stuff.
Yes.
All right, Dean, what's on your radar?
All right, so AOL made an announcement here. Let me try to use some of the.
I heard about this.
Did you? Wait a minute. We all remember this, right?
Oh yeah.
Yes, we're all familiar with that. Marco, maybe you can put it in the edit. Yeah.
There's the quintessential. Right? Yeah. So anyway, so apparently AOL has made the announcement that when was it launched, by the way? Do you guys know? AOL dial-up. So AOL is pulling the plug on dial-up internet. Any guesses on when they started it?
I think it was before my time.
Was it? Well, is 1991 before your time?
Yes.
There you go.
Well, for us olds, it's not.
I totally remember that. So AOL's dial-up is ending September 30th, according to a statement
Who knew
posted
it? Did anyone
on the
know that was
company's
still a
website.
thing?
Oh, apparently it is. Well, here's the statement. AOL routinely evaluates its products and services, has decided to discontinue dial-up internet. Yeah. Now, you may be surprised to know the last census in 2019, so I know this is 6 years ago, but there were still 265,000 people in the U.S. that were using dial-up on a daily basis or whatever. And then they would cite people like, of course, this 85-year-old gentleman that, you know, got into the internet using AOL dial-up and damn it, hasn't moved off of it. And so this guy is pretty
really
upset,
likes that sound,
you know, because, well, I mean, all he does is he logs in, he checks his stocks and checks his email. That's it. That's all he needs to do. But apparently he's going to have to find another way of doing that because AOL cashing it in, not doing dial-up anymore. So
high-speed internet as a utility for everyone. I keep saying that. There's
right.
no reason why there should still be, in the year 2025, people using AOL dial-up. You know?
But the nostalgia of that. I mean,
well,
you know,
yes, the sound
how
is
many
nostalgic,
times have I
yes.
heard that sound?
I know.
And whatever. Yeah. Now we're done. We're done. Yeah. So anyway, what's on your radar, John?
All right, good stuff. All right, well, I'm gonna again. Paul set a bar too high. The rest of us are just never gonna get close to.
Right.
I'm gonna talk a little bit about the nostalgia of music from your teenage years.
Go ahead, sir.
Specifically, there was an article I found in the conversation about like why is music that we listened to as a teen still have an emotional resonance with us, and it's actually not as shocking or surprising as you might think because they're basically coming up with the idea that all right, they did some studies on this and I recognize that the teenage years, it's fraught with emotion as it is.
Yep.
We're
hormones.
We're learning new things, new experiences. Our bodies are changing. The hormones, first love, all that kind of stuff. There's all these big key bonding moments that are happening. You're learning independence. So it actually, when they studied a little more, realized that it goes back to even primal communication, like non-linguistic communication from the primordial days when we were all just walking around grunting and trying to figure out how to use tools and stuff.
I still do that on the weekends.
And essentially, there was. That does not shock me at all. So that same level of non-linguistic communication is what we've kind of over the years evolved into how we communicate with music in a way where you share music with friends. There might be certain songs you listen to with your friends when you were teenagers, and those become kind of iconic anthems to your life that you recognize. Or if you and your friends are hanging out, someone turns that song on, you're all like immediately back in. Hey, remember that time in high school when we did that wacky thing? So it's that kind of stuff that's all bleeding together into this and making the music of our teenage years basically stuff that we associate with our highest and lowest points in our life, and that still resonates even decades later. You can still hear that song that you listened to in high school, and just
I'm sure the sense of community comes in there a little bit.
It does,
because
yeah.
I was, to my surprise, I had my favorite bands growing up, and then when I went to a concert and saw 30,000 other people that thought the same way, there's something to that too, right? But that all happens in your teen.
This is especially resonating with me right now. I was just reading an article about this the other day. So we talked about this on the podcast before. Oasis is my all-time favorite band, and they just came back together for their reunion tour this year. That's coming to the States. Unfortunately, I couldn't get tickets to go.
What?
I tried, but it was not easy to get. Trust me. But they're talking about how their show is like evoking a lot of fond memories, and their first album is 30 years old at this point. And I remember late in my teens, really getting into them, and it's still music that I listen to today, and I feel a certain way about. I'm someone who's evolved enough my music taste to stay up with the times for the most part.
Yes.
But I still, you take me back and put on any I don't know, either the Casey's Top 40 stuff from the early 90s, alt rock, and grunge from the mid 90s or so, and then maybe getting a little more into some pop stuff in the late 90s. All that stuff, still just hits me right in the feels, So there you go.
They've got some science behind it.
Some science behind it. Yes, there's a reason for it, and it's okay if you feel some things when you listen to your favorite band from high school again. Yeah. All right, that is what's on our radar this week. Paul Peralta, Brian Wheeler, thank you guys so much for joining us.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thanks for having us.
Loved having you on the show. Go out and check out some of the Logic Control stuff. Clearly, if you haven't listened to this conversation, understand that it's well built and ready for you to go out and sell.
100%.
This should do it for you. Hey, until next time, we'll see you out there in the nation.